And thank you, Anup. I very carefully listened to all the presentations. I see, how things are progressing into the direction that we have been now talking for several years. Malini, who is my batchmate, she gave a very comprehensive presentation, largely covering various aspects of blue economy and sustainability of the oceans. Then, of course, Mr. P.K. Srivastava, again, covered several aspects of oceans, ocean economy, and sustainability. And then Curtis gave his perspective on how the world community is looking at the opportunities and challenges presented by the oceans. And finally, I was really impressed by Devlina's presentation. This is what we have been talking, that when we talk about MSP, the marine spatial planning. Now, if we are looking at a single unit, one for all, it's not going to work. MSP would develop in smaller regions depending upon those niche requirements. And that is what, Devlina, you are doing, and I'm very happy that you're doing it. But when we talk about MSP, in fact, Mr. Curtis mentioned, let's reconcile with the oceans. Yes, because we have mistreated the oceans so long. There's a feeling that time has come to reconcile with the oceans. I would say not only with the oceans, but the entire environment. Time has come that we reconcile with the environment. And believe me, if I were the ocean and you came to me for reconciliation, I would probably say, please leave me alone. Yes. Because the way we have hurt the environment as a whole, in our interest, I'm sure the environment as a whole is fed up with us. They must be, I'm sure, wondering why the evolutionary process led to the Homo sapiens, who were supposed to be wiser than all other species. But it turned out that the wisdom was somewhere stored in lock and key. And we went into what is called selfish interest. We didn't think of the environment. We only thought of ourselves. And this thought of ourselves, Arnab, I have said this in the past, we thought good life means more consumption. Yes, somehow prosperity was linked to consumption. More you can consume, better you are in society, higher you are in the pecking order. Now, that is where I think the wisdom kind of was completely signed off. Now, if we have to reconcile with the environment, and if we have to reconcile with the oceans, I think because the oceans has a very different language. And that language we will not understand so easily. Because we would not understand the language in the initial phases, finally, the ocean's response will come as punishment. And that is what we are worried about. Because we do not want to ignore the ocean's argument and allow it to go to a stage where then ocean comes back with a heavy punishment on humanity. Now, I'm sure we all heard Secretary General talking about, on today's theme, and he spoke about what kind of challenges the humanity is facing, so-called existential threats. And one of the existential threats he has also always mentioned, and again, he mentioned this week, was climate change. He says climate change is probably the most serious of all the existential threats to humanity. And then, of course, he repeats, he says, we have found the reason why it's happening. And of course, the villain there are the greenhouse gas emissions. Yes. So we have identified the villain, yes, as if once we sort the carbon dioxide out, the problem will be over. You see, if you ask me really, carbon dioxide is an essential component of the planetary functions. The humans did not create carbon dioxide. It was always part of the planetary functions, and it plays an essential role in the survival of life on the earth. So we can look at, because carbon dioxide has become a villain because we did not care. We went in for excesses everywhere. Now, excess of everything is bad. So is the carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases. We started burning the carbon resources which were stored by the nature for millions of years, hundreds of millions of years. And we burnt them in less than 200 years. So obviously there has to be a consequence. So carbon dioxide is not the villain. Now I'm sure I don't have to say that. These are our actions which are the villains. Now when it comes to reconciling, let's reconcile, which means if the nature cannot speak a simple language that we can understand, and please try go on their behalf and try to understand what they're trying to say. And we talk about, say, MDA, maritime domain awareness, which was basically the surface of the ocean. And then, Arnav, I have been saying that for years now. You see, if climate change is the existential threat, the single most important factor in that are the oceans. You see, through electric vehicles, through all other things, we are just chipping at the tip of the iceberg. For example, if you transition all your transport sector, say from fossil fuel to, say, renewable energy, what is the contribution of entire transport sector in greenhouse gas emissions? Just about 10% plus minus 1. Yes. And the oceans absorb almost 33% of the carbon dioxide that we produce. And over and above that, it stores that carbon dioxide for years and years, for millions of years. And there we are talking about, we are not kind of paying attention to what the ocean is saying. Even for that greenhouse gas emission mitigation, we are going to the ocean and we say, all right, we'll get the rare earth elements there to produce batteries. Yes. So what? If you produce all the batteries, you may save maybe 6% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But what kind of risk are we taking? You see, the ocean's health is absolutely central to any idea of sustainability. We agree with the ocean and leave it alone. Let's see what happens. But if we can't leave it alone, then let's start treating the ocean more responsibly. And that is where, Arnav, I have been saying, the actual happening in the ocean is underwater. Whatever happens in the ocean, we see the symptoms on the surface, but the actual dynamics is underwater. This could be the physical dynamics, this could be the chemical dynamics, this could be the biological dynamics. Whatever we look at, it is underwater. So unless we understand what's happening underwater, you cannot think of MSP. MSP is largely dependent on your understanding of the underwater. because you need to understand the consequences of your action in the ocean, and the consequences are happening underwater. The ocean is so big. Now, how can you really kind of study and constantly 24/7 that large water body underwater? That is where our UDA framework is important, which means Devlina mentioned about data. Data is the key for underwater domain awareness. It's data driven, basically. Now, if you have data, then you understand the language of the ocean. And as a result, you can then negotiate and reconcile with the ocean. So, your UDA framework. Now, if you can't do everything everywhere, can you develop systems? Right? Can you develop those systems which are scalable? Which means you develop a system in different parts of the ecosystem or marine ecosystem. Then based on the data, if you develop systems, diagnostics, the other day I mentioned about, say, a healthcare diagnostics. Now, I was telling, for example, when they do my blood report, looking at the blood report, they tell me how my heart is behaving, how my kidney is behaving, how my liver is behaving. They don't have to open my body every time. You see, that is what UDA framework is all about, Anup. Which means you don't have to dig into the ocean every time. But those diagnostics will tell you what's happening underneath. Yes. And that is where I'm really happy that more and more people are paying attention to the importance of underwater domain awareness. Whatever we are thinking into future in terms of environment management, reference to oceans, it is the UDA. Understand the underwater. Based on that understanding, develop the systems which then can act as diagnostics. That is what, Arnab, I thought I will briefly sum up. People are worried about the ocean health and environment as a whole. People are talking at the highest level, but because this problem is not a small problem. This problem cannot be resolved within the air-conditioned rooms and discussions. This requires a whole of society approach, which means people, education, industry, policy, safety and security, you name it. Unless we all come together, we cannot solve this problem. We cannot reconcile with nature. Unfortunately, we are still fighting with the nature. Yes. Rather than trying to reconcile, some people are talking about reconciliation, but a large number of people are still fighting against the nature. They want to defeat the nature. Please, let's not defeat the nature. Let's live with the nature. Yes. We belong to, this is our home. Yes. We can't defeat our own home. Yes, we are part of this ecosystem. So with these words, I congratulate once again MRC, your entire team. You keep bringing people together for sensitizing that we owe a responsible behavior to the next generation. And believe me, if this generation doesn't do it, it will be too late. So with these words, I thank you very much for giving me a chance to be here, listen to people who are expert in their respective fields, and then express my opinion. I feel helpless in a way because the challenge is too big. Words are big, but the actions are small. Now let's see how we resolve it. Thank you so much.